I built something real. For 38 years, I built something that mattered. Rivera and Associates wasn't just a construction company. It was my father's dream, passed to me when his hands could no longer hold a level. I took his three-man crew and turned it into the largest commercial builder in Houston. We built the medical centers, the office towers, the schools where my grandkids learned to read. But I didn't build it alone. Derek Chen started as my assistant project manager in 1987. Fresh out of Texas A&M, eager, brilliant with numbers, he could look at a blueprint and tell you the cost down to the last nail. More than that, he could talk to clients, make them trust us, make them believe. We were brothers, not by blood, but by something stronger. Late nights reviewing bids, early mornings on job sites. His kids called me Uncle Marcus. My daughter was godmother to his youngest. When my father died in 2003, Derek held me while I cried at the funeral. When his mother got cancer in 2008, I paid every medical bill without him asking. That's what brothers do. In 2015, I made him CFO and vice president, 50% partner, equal shares. My wife, Patricia, said I should have my lawyer draw up more protections, more clauses. I told her Derek was family. You don't need contracts with family. I was 62 years old and tired. The company was pulling in $40 million a year. Derek handled the numbers, the finances, the contracts. I focused on client relationships and the builds themselves. It worked. It worked beautifully, until it didn't. The letter came on a Tuesday morning in March 2024. IRS audit notice. Routine, they said. Nothing to worry about. Derek laughed it off. They audit big companies all the time, Marcus. I'll handle it. You focus on the Midtown project. I trusted him. Why wouldn't I? He'd been handling our books for 23 years. 2 weeks later, Patricia found me in my office at home, staring at my computer screen. My hands were shaking. Marcus, what's wrong? I couldn't speak. I just turned the screen toward her. Our company account, the one that should have had $12 million. It showed $600,000. There must be a mistake, Patricia said. But her voice was thin, scared. I called Derek. Voicemail. I called again. And again. Nothing. I drove to his house. Empty. Mail piling up. His car gone. That's when the cold fear started crawling up my spine. I called our accountant, Richard Morrison. He'd been with us for 15 years. Good man. Methodist. Coached Little League. Richard, I need you to look at something. The company accounts. Marcus. His voice was strange. Tight. The IRS called me yesterday. They want to talk to you. They're talking about criminal charges. My ears started ringing. Criminal charges? For what? Marcus, there are expenses. Millions in expenses. Consulting fees. Equipment purchases. All approved by you. All with your signature. The IRS is saying they're fraudulent, that the money went to offshore accounts. I didn't approve anything like that. Derek handles. The documents have your signature, Marcus. Your authorization. Bank transfers, tax documents, everything. I sat down hard. My office spun. How much? I whispered. Richard was quiet for a long moment. Just over $6.4 million. I thought I might be sick. That's not possible. I would have known. I would have seen. Marcus, you need a lawyer. A criminal lawyer. The IRS is building a case. They think you were hiding income, laundering money through fake expenses. They're talking about tax evasion, wire fraud. You could go to prison. Prison. I was 63 years old. I'd built buildings that would stand for 100 years. I'd employed 300 people, put 1,000 kids through college with scholarship programs. And now they thought I was a criminal. I called Derek 60 times that day. Nothing. I went to the police, filed a report. They took notes, said they'd look into it. Their faces told me they didn't believe me. Rich contractor claims his partner stole millions, but all the documents have his signature? Sure, buddy. The IRS agent came to my office the next week. Her name was Stephanie Torres. Young, sharp, merciless. She laid out documents across my desk. Dozens of them, all with my signature. approving payments to consulting firms that didn't exist, equipment purchases that never arrived, services never rendered. Mr. Rivera, these are federal offenses: wire fraud, tax evasion, money laundering. We're looking at 15 to 20 years. I didn't sign these. My voice sounded desperate even to my own ears. Derek forged them. He must have. Sir, we have handwriting experts. These are your signatures, your authorization codes, your personal email account approving transactions. My email? I stared at her. How would he have my... And then I remembered. 3 years ago, Derek said the email system was being upgraded. He needed my password to transfer files. I gave it to him. Of course I did. He was my partner, my brother. He'd been using my email for 3 years, signing my name, approving his own theft with my own hand. Agent Torres gathered her papers. We'll be in touch, Mr. Rivera. I suggest you retain counsel. Patricia found me that night in the garage, sitting in the dark. She didn't say anything, just sat next to me and held my hand. 38 years, I said. Everything Dad built, everything I built, gone. And they think I did it. They think I'm the thief. We'll fight this, Patricia said, but her voice cracked. We mortgaged our home, pulled from retirement accounts, hired Marcus Goldstein, the best criminal defense attorney in Texas. $35,000 retainer. Just the beginning, he said. Goldstein reviewed everything. The documents, the bank records, the email trails. Marcus, I'll be straight with you. This looks bad. Every piece of evidence points to you authorizing these transactions. Derek covered his tracks perfectly. Unless we can prove forgery, prove he had access to your accounts, prove intent to defraud, you're looking at serious prison time. There has to be something, some way to prove. The IRS has been building this case for 8 months. They have forensic accountants, digital forensics. They're convinced you're guilty, and on paper, you are. I lost 15 pounds in 2 weeks. Couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. Patricia would find me at 3 a.m. going through old files, old emails, looking for something, anything. The company started falling apart. Word got out. Clients pulled contracts. Employees quit. Our bonding company dropped us. Can't bid on projects without bonding. My phone rang constantly. Creditors, suppliers. The bank calling about our business line of credit. We'd missed payments. First time in 38 years. I went to see Father Martinez at Our Lady of Guadalupe, the church my father helped build, where I'd been married, where my children were baptized. Father, I don't know what to do. I'm innocent, but I can't prove it. Everything looks like I did it. And Derek is gone, like smoke. Father Martinez was 78 years old. He'd known me since I was a boy. Your father used to sit in that same pew, he said, when the business was struggling. When he didn't know how he'd make payroll, he'd sit and pray, and then he'd go home and work. That's all we can do, Marcus. Work and pray and trust. I don't know what to work at anymore, Father. There's nothing left to save. There's always something, he said. Your father used to say that. Even when it looks darkest, there's always something. I drove home through the city my company had helped build. Past the medical center we'd constructed, the community college, the affordable housing complex, all of it with Rivera and Associates signs out front. All of it about to have a criminal's name on it. Patricia was in the kitchen when I got home. She'd been crying. She tried to hide it, but I could tell. The house, she said quietly. Goldstein called. He needs another $50,000 for the forensic accountant. We need to take out a second mortgage. This was the house we'd bought 30 years ago, where we'd raised our kids, where our grandchildren played in the backyard. Do it, I said. Whatever it takes. But I didn't believe it would matter. Derek had been too smart, too careful, too thorough. That night, I couldn't sleep. Again, I went to my home office and started going through old files. Not company files, personal files. Trying to remember when it started. When Derek began stealing, I found photos from the old days. Derek and me at a job site in 1990. Both of us young, laughing, covered in sawdust. Derek holding my first grandchild in 1998, his arm around my shoulders at my father's funeral. How had I not seen it? How had I trusted so completely? My father's voice echoed in my memory. Something he used to say when I was young, learning the business. Mijo, always keep your own records, even with partners, even with family. Not because you don't trust them, because memory fades, because paper tells the truth when words can lie. Keep everything. I remembered arguing with him, telling him he was paranoid, old-fashioned. You think your hee-ho is paranoid? He'd laughed. Maybe. But this paranoid man never got cheated. I sat back in my chair. Keep everything. My father had kept everything. Every invoice, every receipt, every contract. He'd kept them in the same place for 40 years. The storage unit on Telephone Road. We'd rented it in 1982 when we moved offices. Never gave it up. My father had made me promise to keep paying the rent even after he was gone. You never know when you need old records, he'd said. I hadn't been there in years. The rent came out automatically. I'd forgotten it existed. I looked at my watch. 4:30 in the morning. The storage facility opened at 6. I was there at 5:45, pacing in front of the gate. The manager, a young guy named Danny, looked at me strange when he unlocked the gate. Early morning, Mr. Rivera. Need to get some old files, I said. My hands were shaking. From lack of sleep, I told myself. Not from hope. I couldn't afford hope. Unit 247. Same one my father had rented 42 years ago. I'd kept paying the $120 monthly rent out of habit, out of respect for my father's memory. The lock was stiff. I hadn't opened it in 8 years, since right after my father's funeral, when I'd stored his last personal effects. The door rolled up with a shriek of metal. Dusty, dark, full of boxes and filing cabinets from decades past. My father's careful handwriting on every box. Dates, job names, client names. I started pulling boxes. 1,987. That's when Derek started. I found it near the back. 3 boxes labeled 1987 to 1992. Inside, my father's meticulous records. Every payment, every employee file, every contract. And there, in Derek Chen's employee file, something that made me stop breathing. A copy of Derek's job application. His original signature on the I-9 form. His handwriting on the interview notes my father had made. I pulled out my phone, took photos, dozens of them. Then I kept digging. 1995 to 2000. More records, including copies of early contracts, before everything went digital, copies of signed documents from that era. And then I found it. In a manila folder labeled Partnership Agreement, I have in 2015, something I'd never seen before. A handwritten note from my father, dated 2012, 3 years before he died. Marcus, if you're reading this, something is wrong. I've been watching Derek, the way he handles money, the questions he asks about access and signatures. Maybe I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong. But I've kept copies of everything, with his signature, his handwriting, everything from the beginning. If you ever need to prove something, it's all here. Trust your gut, like I taught you. Papa. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold the paper. My father had known. Somehow, he'd sensed something wrong, and he'd kept evidence, just in case. I spent 4 hours in that storage unit, photographing everything. Derek's original employment documents, his signature from 1,987, his handwriting samples, copies of old contracts and approvals from the 1990s and 2000s, before digital, before he had access to electronic signatures. Then I found the last box, labeled only important, Marcus only. Inside, a digital voice recorder, old model from the early 2000s. And a note. Marcus, I recorded my last conversation with Derek in 2014. I asked him about some discrepancies in petty cash. Small things, nothing big. But listen to how he reacts. Listen to how he answers. A man with nothing to hide doesn't answer like that. I might be wrong, but if I'm not, this might help. Te quiero, mijo. Papa. I picked up the recorder with shaking hands. Pressed play. My father's voice, aged but strong. Derek, I'm looking at the petty cash reconciliation from last quarter. Can you explain these three withdrawals? 4,000, 2,500, 1,800? A pause. Then Derek's voice, younger, but unmistakably him. Those were cash payments to subcontractors. Some of the smaller guys prefer cash. Can you show me the receipts? Another pause. Longer. I'd have to dig through files. Is there a problem, Frank? Just doing my due diligence. Marcus trusts you completely. But I'm old-fashioned. I like to see paper. Frank, are you saying you don't trust me? Derek's voice had an edge. Sharp, almost angry. I'm saying I like to verify. Nothing personal. It feels pretty personal. After everything I've done for this company, for Marcus, I thought we were family. Family keeps good records, my father said. Calm, steady. Get me those receipts by Friday. The recording ended. I played it again. And again. That tone in Derek's voice. Defensive. Angry. The way he pivoted to emotion, to family, to trust. Instead of just answering the question, my father had heard it too. And he'd kept the recording for 10 years. I gathered everything, boxes of documents. The recorder, my father's notes, loaded it all into my truck. I called Goldstein at 7:30 a.m. I need to see you, right now. I found something. In his office, an hour later, I spread everything across his conference table. The employment documents, the handwriting samples, the voice recording, my father's notes. Goldstein looked at everything carefully, put on reading glasses, picked up the recorder, listened to it 3 times. Finally, he looked up at me. For the first time since I'd hired him, he was smiling. Marcus, this changes everything. We can get a handwriting expert to compare Derek's original signatures to the signatures on the fraudulent documents. If there's any variation, any sign of practice or forgery, we can prove he forged them. And if the signatures match, they won't. Look at these. He held up 2 documents. Derek's original I-9 from 1987 and one of the fraudulent approval forms from 2021. See the D in his last name. In 1987, he makes a little loop at the top. In 2021, it's a straight line. People's handwriting changes over time. But when you're forging someone else's signature, you don't know these small details. You copy what you see, but the base handwriting has subtle differences. What about the email approvals? We'll get a forensic IT expert to examine the IP addresses, the login patterns, the device signatures. If Derek was accessing your email from different locations, different devices, we can prove it, especially if he got sloppy and logged in from his phone or his home computer. Hope, real hope. For the first time in months. What about the recording? I asked. It's not direct evidence of fraud, but it establishes pattern of behavior. It shows he reacted defensively to financial scrutiny, got emotional instead of providing documentation. Combined with everything else, it paints a picture. And your father's note. Goldstein shook his head in admiration. Your father was protecting you from beyond the grave. I drove home with tears running down my face. Not from sadness, from something else. Gratitude, love, grief that my father wasn't here to see this, but knowing he'd known, he'd prepared for this moment. Goldstein moved fast. Within a week, he had hired the best forensic handwriting analyst in the Southwest. Dr. Linda Patel spent 3 days comparing signatures. Her report was 20 pages long. The conclusion was on page 1. The signatures attributed to Marcus Rivera on documents dated 2018 to 2024 show significant deviation from his baseline handwriting patterns. The signatures attributed to Derek Chen across 40 years show progressive natural variation consistent with aging, but the fundamental structure remains constant. However, Derek Chen's signatures on recent documents show careful deliberation rather than natural flow, suggesting forgery practice. The IT forensics came back next. Derek had been sloppy. He'd accessed my email from his phone, from his home computer, even from his vacation in Costa Rica in 2019. The login patterns showed he'd been checking my email sometimes 3 times a day, including times when I was verified to be on job sites without internet access. Goldstein sent everything to Agent Torres and the assistant U.S. attorney handling the case, along with a formal demand to investigate Derek Chen for fraud, forgery, and embezzlement. 2 days later, my phone rang. Agent Torres. Mr. Rivera, we need to talk. Can you come to our office? I went with Goldstein. My hands were sweating. I'd barely slept in 6 days. Agent Torres met us in a conference room. She looked different, less hostile, almost apologetic. Mr. Rivera, we've reviewed the evidence your attorney provided. We've also conducted our own analysis. She paused. The investigation into your conduct is being closed. No charges will be filed. My legs went weak. Goldstein gripped my arm. Furthermore, Torres continued, we're opening a criminal investigation into Derek Chen. The evidence suggests systematic fraud, forgery, wire fraud, and money laundering. We've issued an arrest warrant, and we're working with international authorities to locate him. Where is he? I asked. My voice barely worked. We tracked him to Singapore initially. He's moved since then. But we'll find him. These cases take time. But we'll find him. I walked out of that building into Houston's sunshine. Patricia was waiting in the parking lot. I'd called her before I went in, told her to come. Told her I needed her there, no matter what happened. She saw my face and started crying. I was crying too. We held each other in that parking lot for a long time. The story made the news a week later. Houston construction executive exonerated in fraud case. Partner accused of $6.4 million theft. Clients started calling, cautiously at first, then more confidently. The bonding company reconsidered. Employees who'd left started asking if they could come back. It took a year, but Rivera and Associates survived. Smaller, humbler, but alive. Derek was arrested in Manila in February 2025, extradited to Houston in April. The trial is scheduled for next month. Goldstein says the case is airtight, 15 to 20 years, probably. I'll be in court for every day of it. Not for revenge, for closure. But that's not the end of the story. The real end came on a Sunday in May. I drove to the cemetery where my father is buried. Haven't been there since all this started. Couldn't face it. I knelt by his headstone. Fresh flowers from my sisters. I added my own. Papa, I said, you saved me. You saved everything. Even after you were gone, you were still protecting me. The wind moved through the oak trees. Somewhere nearby, a bird sang. You told me to keep records. I thought you were paranoid, old-fashioned. But you were right. You were right about everything. I stayed there for an hour, telling him about the company, about the grandkids, about Patricia, about everything he'd missed. When I stood to leave, I noticed something. My father's headstone is simple, just his name, dates, and one line he'd chosen himself before he died. Built well, built honest, built forever. That night, I sat at my kitchen table. Patricia was asleep upstairs. The house was quiet. I thought about Derek, about how I'd trusted him, called him brother, about how he'd stolen from me, framed me, destroyed 38 years of work without blinking. But mostly, I thought about my father, about a man who kept records not because he was paranoid, but because he loved me, because he wanted to protect me even after he was gone, because he understood that evil exists, but so does preparation. I went to my office and pulled out the storage unit receipt. $120 a month, 42 years, just over $60,000 total. $60,000 for $6.4 million in recovered money. For my freedom, for my reputation, for my company. But really, it wasn't about the money at all. My father had left me something more valuable than money, more valuable than evidence or recordings or handwriting samples. He'd left me proof that someone loved me enough to spend decades preparing for a disaster he hoped would never come. That someone believed in me enough to protect me from beyond the grave. That someone built foundations that lasted. I opened my computer, started a new document, titled it, For My Children, Important. And I began to write. If you're reading this, something has gone wrong. But don't panic. I've been keeping records. I've been preparing, not because I don't trust you, not because I'm paranoid, but because love means protection, because family means preparation, because I learned from the best teacher I ever had. In Storage Unit 247 on Telephone Road, you'll find everything you need, every signature, every contract, every piece of evidence to prove the truth. But more than that, you'll find proof that your grandfather loved you before you were born, that your father loved you enough to learn from his mistakes. That family means building foundations that last beyond our lifetimes. Keep the unit, keep paying the rent, keep adding your own records, not because you're paranoid, but because you're loved. And you're protected, always. I saved the document, printed it, put it in a fire-safe box that I'd keep in my office. Then I went to bed. For the first time in a year, I slept through the night, because I'd learned what my father tried to teach me 30 years ago. Paper tells the truth when words can lie. Records last when memory fades. And love means protecting the people you care about long after you're gone. Derek took $6.4 million from me. He took a year of my life. He took my trust. But my father gave me something back that was worth far more. He gave me proof that I was never alone, that I was always protected, that the foundations we build in life, if we build them right, if we build them with love, last forever. And that's worth more than any amount of money in the world.